Hello. So tonight's video is going to be another installation of my book ASMR series. It is thunderstorming pretty hard outside. So if you hear some low grumbles, that's what that is. Maybe you're new here, or maybe you've seen my other book videos, but basically I'm going to be talking about some books that I've read recently. Books that I am currently reading. And this time I don't really have books that I'm going to read. So this is not really like a haul video. And you can probably tell right now that this video is going to be soft spoken mixed with whisper. It's been a very, very long time since I've done a soft spoken video, so I am a bit out of practice. Either way, if you like hearing people chit-chat about books and do book ASMR triggers like page turning, tapping, gripping, things like that, you might enjoy this video. And I might switch to whisper, full whisper, for the last book review, so that if you're using this to sleep, my voice doesn't wake you up. I have some tea here, which is what I've been tapping on, in a very cute strawberry mug. Water sounds are so controversial in ASMR, but I love them, but this video won't have too much of that. Well, without further ado, let's get right to the books. So this is my first book, The Color Purple by Alice Walker. It's been a while since I've done a book video, but I think I talked about this book in my last one. It was sort of an impulse buy at a used bookstore. Sometimes if I recognize a classic at a used bookstore, I pick it up in case someday I want to read it. I feel like there's a big resurgence is how you say it, of respect and interest in classics. Well, I finally read this book, and 5 out of 5. I loved this book. Maybe especially because I've never seen the movie, so I had no idea what to expect. I kind of thought it would be like one of my other favorite books. Their eyes were watching God. And I was kind of correct. It is a winner of the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. I read this in like hours. Like it was a very quick read. You can see that the text is pretty big. And it's a novel that tells a story through letters, and prayers, I guess. And that has a name, I think it's like epistolary, something like that. Published, I'm going to read the back. Published to unprecedented acclaim. The Color Purple established Alice Walker as a major voice in modern fiction. This is the story of two sisters. One, a missionary in Africa, and the other, a child wife living in the South, who sustain their loyalty to and trust in each other across time, distance, and silence. Beautifully imagined and deeply compassionate, this classic novel of American literature is rich with passion, pain, inspiration, and an indomitable love of life. Very, very rarely does a book make me cry. And I think I cried twice reading this. It's a very heavy book in the sense that it covers very heavy topics, very sad situations. But it simultaneously is so full of hope and love. I really didn't expect to like it as much as I did like it, and I highly recommend it, especially because it really is a very fast read. Let's do some page turning. I have kind of a habit, which maybe I've talked about, where I like to read something literary and then read something indulgent or fantasy. And it kind of keeps me on a good reading streak. In the time since I've read, in the time since I've posted my last book video, I have read a lot of fantasy and very little literary fiction or classics. And that's because I read a series which I will talk about called The Realm of the Elderlings. And it has like 16 books in it, and I read all 16 books in like 2 months. I really devoured them. So, I wouldn't call this a palate cleanser, but it was my classic that I read after. I never know how much to talk about the plot in the books when I talk about them, because I love going into books blind as much as possible. I rarely even read the back when I pick up a book. But there were so many good characters. I just really liked it, and I think I won't tell you anything about what happens, because I think you should read this book. So speaking of the realm of the Elderlings, it is a around 16 book series, fantasy series by Robin Hobb. And they're all related to each other, but the structure is something like the first trilogy is a first-person POV by the character Fitz. Chivalry Farseer, who, because he is a bastard, am I allowed to say that on YouTube? He's an illegitimate heir to the throne, so he becomes an assassin. And then the next trilogy is in the same world, but with a new cast of characters, and it kind of goes back and forth like that. So this is the second book of the first trilogy, Royal Assassin. I loved the entire series. If you are looking for a character-driven fantasy series, I highly recommend this series. When you Google like best fantasy series of all time, you will probably see this series. And I'm here to tell you that it is so worth it. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but if you liked Game of Thrones or any other kind of character-driven fantasies, you will probably enjoy this one. This is a very heavy book. I read the first 2 books with actual books, and then after that, I read them from the library on my Kindle. expectations quite a few times because I have read a lot of fantasy and I liked how it sometimes defied tropes and things like that, but yes, I feel like I could make an entire book video about this series. This is a version that has illustrations. Let me try to find one. This is such a big, heavy book, and I'm trying not to make a lot of noise with it. I like that crinkling sound. Yeah, I don't think I will read you the back because it's pretty fun not knowing anything. A lot of the fans are divided on which trilogy or series within the series are the best. And I think my favorite was the first trilogy, though I really did like Life Ship Traders as well. But yeah, I read all of these books in like 2 months, so highly recommend. Winterfest is as much a celebration of the darkest part of the year as a festival of the returning light. For the first 3 days of Winterfest, we pay homage to the darkness. The tales told and puppet shows presented are those that tell of resting times and happy endings. The foods are salt fish and smoked flesh, harvested roots and fruit from last summer. Then on the midday of the festival there is a hunt. New blood is shed to celebrate the breaking point of the year, and new meat is brought fresh to the table to be eaten with grain harvested from the year before. The next 3 days are days that look toward the coming summer. The looms are threaded with care thread, and the weavers take over an end of the great hall to vie among themselves for the brightest patterns and lightest weave. That was a little excerpt. Yeah, I just really loved this series. It's been a while since I've read a fantasy series that I fell in love with. I feel like I kept reading a lot of hit and misses, if that makes sense. Like I read The Will of the Many and The Strength of the Few after I read this as my next fantasy series. And I liked them, but I didn't love them, which just kept happening to me over and over. So I was so happy to find a series that I loved. So another very highly recommended series if you like fantasy. Thankfully for my arms, this is a small book called Interpreter of Maladies. is another book that won the Pulitzer Prize, and it is a collection of short stories. I got this book as a gift, a birthday gift from a friend, because they know I like to read. And I'm always a little nervous when I'm gifted a book, because I'm usually pretty picky about what I want to read, and I have a very, very, very long to-be-read list, so nevertheless, I did read this, mainly because it was kind of short, and I was looking for my literary fiction book. I enjoyed this a lot. It wasn't like a 5 out of 5, but I do wonder if my enjoyment was impacted because I don't read short story collections very often. I prefer 16 novel fantasy series. But let me read you the back. This stunning debut collection unerringly charts the emotional journeys of characters seeking love beyond the barriers of nations and generations. In stories that travel from India to America and back again, Jhumpa Lahiri speaks with universal eloquence to everyone who has ever felt like a foreigner. So, all the short stories connect in theme a bit, where it's like Indian Americans or Indians living abroad, or even, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this, or Indians who grew up abroad and went back home to India. And some of the stories take place completely in India. But it was like a culture I wasn't that exposed to, so it was fun learning about it. There were like 2 or 3 short stories in here that really were very good, and others that were good but not like incredible. I remember really liking the first one, and also the titular story interpreter of Maladies. Do you like reading short stories or collections? It's very rare for me to do that, but after reading this, I really liked how I could just read one short story and then take a break and come back to it, and I didn't have to remember any characters or plot necessarily. It did remind me that I really want to visit India someday, but I'm very intimidated by how big of a country it is. I remember the foreword being really interesting in this book. Maybe I'll read a bit, but I really should move on, or this video will be 2 hours long. Forward. Only now, as I prepare to write for the 20th birthday of this remarkable book, does it occur to me that I already celebrated its first 10 years of life without knowing it. I did so when in the fall of 2009 I bought it for €1 in Rome. picking it out of a dusty heap of used books and reading it right away in the course of an afternoon and a long, intense evening. There is no better way to pay tribute to a book, in my opinion. Back then, I knew nothing about the author. It was the book that seduced me, one that betrayed signs of a fervent life, tattered cover, sentences underlined with exclamation points in the margins. But the deciding factor was the title. I knew that I was buying a book of stories, and stories, as we know, aren't necessarily born in order to coexist. Each might lead a solitary, independent life. Constraining them within a book can sometimes feel forced, unless something signals to us the fact that their cohabitation makes perfect sense. So yeah, if you like short stories or like cultural snippets, I don't know, it was really good. I would recommend it to you if that's the case. Now this is a non-fiction book that I enjoyed. It's called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. And we have another winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So this is a non-fiction book that compares 3 caste systems. The caste system in Nazi Germany, the caste system in India, and the caste system in the United States, especially during the era of slavery and Jim Crow. I'm nervous to talk too much about it because I don't want to misremember a fact or anything like that, and it's been a while since I read it, but I believe the author is presenting evidence that the U.S. was and is in a caste system. And I thought it was really well done, though I had trouble reading it sometimes. Because, as you can imagine, it's very grim, dark, sad. But I felt like I learned a lot when I read it. Even though I read like one chapter every few days, and I always felt so sad after. Let me read you the summary. In this brilliant book, Wilkerson gives us a masterful portrait of an unseen phenomenon in America as she explores through an immersive, deeply researched narrative and stories about real people how America today and throughout its history has been shaped by a hidden caste system, a rigid hierarchy of human rankings. Beyond race, class, or other factors, a powerful caste system influences people's lives and behavior and the nation's fate. It's got the dust jacket on, which is kind of a nice sound. If you are into nonfiction, I highly recommend. I feel like this book video, I'm talking about a lot of books that I really liked. So, I have something to admit to you. I got this book at a used bookstore or a thrift store. And I picked it up because I thought it was only about the Indian caste system, which I have been curious to learn more about. So I was pretty surprised that that was only a part of it. If you know a book or have a recommendation about a nonfiction book that is about the Indian caste system, I would be very curious to hear about it if you recommend it. I feel like after, or as I was reading this book, which sometimes happens to me if I read a nonfiction, but I just tend to talk all my friends' ears off about the things that I learned in it. Unfortunately, none of them are fun facts in this book, only sad ones. So, but still, I recommend it. I enjoyed it. Oh, and Oprah's book club. So this is a book that I believe is not out yet, but I got an advance copy. It's called The Small Stuff by Ian Bogost. And the reason I got an advance copy is because there is a section on ASMR. Let me read you the back. In the era of convenience and efficiency, one would think that our lives would be simpler, easier, and more importantly, happier. After all, shouldn't the omnipresence of machines and technology leave us with more time for ourselves? The Atlantic columnist Ian Bogost thinks not. From digital tickets to automated faucets, he argues that life's simple pleasures have been stripped away, replaced by sleek but soulless design. Through engaging anecdotes and sharp analysis, Bogost uncovers how modern conveniences not only fail to deliver on their promises, but also rob us of small, satisfying experiences that keep us grounded and human. This is a book I probably would have picked up to read, even without being sent a copy, because the concept is something that I think about a lot, about how we're disconnected. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I did love the section on ASMR. I just love books that take it seriously and talk about how it is a grounding, mindful genre. find a quote that I liked. You don't need to become an ASMR artist, as these creators sometimes call themselves, to exaggerate the joy you feel from sweaters, as an example. Think of ASMR as both a guide and permission to connect a little bit more with the ordinary tactile experiences that produce gratification. It's okay to run your hands across the clothing in your closet before choosing an item to wear. It's okay to smooth the bedsheet even if you don't make the bed. Holding the coffee cup, feeling its warmth, and eliciting a deep sound from its hollow by tapping it is also part of the reason you drink coffee, not just to wake up for another day at a job that might or might not make you happy. So yeah, the author explores how ASMR can be a tool, and not just watching it, but kind of incorporating it into a more mindful, gratifying life. It reminds me of my most recent video that I filmed, where I used this as a trigger. And I was talking about how I found it in a store, and I picked it up and I was feeling it, tapping on it, listening to the sounds it made. And I did that because I was testing if it would be a good ASMR trigger. And I do that more often now that I do this for a job, but I was just thinking about how it's such a nice little grounding moment, being in a store and feeling something. I don't know. So yeah, you should check out this book when it comes out, especially if you want to support people and authors talking about ASMR. It was only like half of a chapter, but the whole book, or what I've read of it, has been really pleasant. Okay, so I'm gonna whisper from here on out, but this book is called Beso de la Mujer, Araña, and it is in Spanish, and I picked it up at a used bookstore again, because it was the only book in Spanish, the only novel that they had, and I kind of was judging a book by the cover, and I thought it would not be good. I don't know why. The translation is The Kiss of the Spider Woman by Manuel. Wait. And he is an Argentinian author, and the book was written, I think, in the 70s. I also learned that it is a movie, and it might be a famous old movie, I'm not sure. I'm loving it. I am really enjoying it. The book is a conversation between two cellmates in Argentina. So the book is all a conversation, and I thought that was really unique. And a big plot point is that one of the men in the cell is telling his cellmate the plots of movies. I don't know, I'm really enjoying it, and it probably So if that's around where you are, I highly recommend this book. You could maybe get away with being B1. Apparently it was a banned book in Argentina, but I'm not gonna spoil anything. So I did want to show you something kind of funny, because it is used. I saw this writing on the inside from the person who owned it and eventually donated it. But it was somebody trying to use the book to practice Spanish. However, and this might be a little bit mean, they wrote here, "Después" means after. And después is kind of like an A1 level word, like a very beginner level word. So it kind of tells a story that she didn't know what that meant and was translating all these words. And then the next page, nothing. So I think that she bought it, read the first page, and gave up very quickly. Because I would say, yeah, this isn't like a beginner novel. But it kind of made me laugh, and it was cute. I like owning used